What happens when you dissolve 2 tablespoons of borax in a quart of water, pour it on a bare patch of dirt, and check the trail camera 3 weeks later? Because on my northern Ohio property, I ran that test last August, and the treated site pulled 31 deer visits in 21 days compared to 9 visits at an untreated control patch 80 yards away, roughly the distance from home plate to the outfield wall. Same travel corridor, same cameras, same time window. The borax site pulled roughly 3.5 times the traffic. And the visits did not stop after the first rain the way most mineral applications do. They continued for 6 weeks without a single refresh. The active compound in 20 Mule Team Borax, which costs $5 for a 6.5-ounce box at any grocery store, is sodium tetraborate chemical formula Na2B4O7. That box contains enough for roughly 30 individual applications across 2 or more full seasons. A bag of Evolved Habitats deer cane costs $22. Wild Game Innovations mineral block runs $12. Trophy rock costs $18. Over 5 seasons, the borax costs roughly $10 total. The commercial equivalents cost $120 to $440, depending on the brand and refresh rate. I need to address the legal side up front. Placing mineral supplements on the ground for the purpose of attracting deer is classified as baiting in roughly 20 to 25 states. If your state bans mineral-based attractants, borax falls under that restriction the same way a commercial mineral block does. Check your state regulations before using this or any mineral product. In states where mineral supplementation is legal year-round but restricted during hunting season, apply the borax in spring and summer and stop all applications at least 30 days before your season opens. I also need to address dosage, because this is the detail that separates a deer attractant from a soil poison. 2 tablespoons dissolved in a quart of water is the correct application for a 2-foot circle of bare soil, roughly the size of a truck tire. Do not increase the amount. Borax at high concentrations is toxic to plants and can damage the microbial ecosystem in the soil that deer rely on for natural forage. A 1/4 cup of dry borax dumped directly on the ground will kill the vegetation in that spot and create a barren circle that deer may avoid rather than investigate. 2 tablespoons dissolved in water. That is the recipe. If you have tested borax as a mineral site treatment and tracked the results on camera, I want to hear your numbers. Stay until the end, because the reason this product keeps pulling deer for 6 weeks without refreshing, while every commercial mineral washes out in 5 to 7 days, has nothing to do with the sodium and everything to do with a trace element that most hunters have never heard of in the context of deer management, and it connects to the single most expensive biological process in a buck's entire year. The surface understanding of borax as a deer attractant is the sodium. Sodium tetraborate contains sodium ions, and white-tailed deer crave sodium the same way they crave the sodium in a salt block or a commercial mineral lick. The sodium draw is real. Research from the University of Georgia's Deer Lab has documented that whitetails increase sodium-seeking behavior by roughly 40% during the antler growth period from March through August compared to baseline winter levels. The deer visit your borax site partly because of the sodium. That part is no different from plain salt. But the deeper understanding, the part that makes borax different from every other mineral product, including commercial blocks and homemade salt licks, is the boron. Borax is the most common commercial source of the element boron. When sodium tetraborate dissolves in water, it releases borate ions into the soil solution. Boron is a trace mineral that plays a specific role in calcium metabolism in mammals. It assists the transport of calcium ions across cell membranes, which is the mechanism by which calcium moves from the bloodstream into growing bone and antler tissue. A study published by the USDA's Agricultural Research Service documented that boron supplementation in mammalian diets increased calcium absorption efficiency by 10 to 15% in controlled feeding trials. That number matters because antler growth is the most calcium-intensive biological process in the whitetail's year. A buck grows antlers at a rate of roughly 1/4 inch per day from March through August, about the width of a pencil lead per day, and the calcium demand during peak growth is so extreme that bucks resorb calcium from their own rib bones and skull plates to supplement what their diet provides. Research from Mississippi State University's Deer Lab has documented measurable decreases in rib bone density during peak antler growth, confirming that the buck's skeleton is dissolving to feed his antlers. A mineral site that provides boron in addition to sodium and calcium gives the visiting buck's body a tool to absorb calcium more efficiently, which reduces the amount of skeletal resorption needed during antler growth. The deer may not understand the chemistry, but his body recognizes the boron as something useful because the biological feedback loop between boron intake and calcium transport efficiency is documented in ruminant physiology. The deer does not think about boron. He just knows the dirt at that spot makes him feel different than the dirt everywhere else. Quick pause here. Everything I just walked through, and 100 more tricks like it, is sitting inside the Buck Hunter's Bible, 2026 edition. 280 pages of the stuff that actually puts deer on the ground. And right now, if you grab it, I am throwing in the 3-0 day opening day roadmap completely free. That is a 60-page day-by-day preseason plan that walks you from the first scout to opening morning, so you start this season ahead of every other hunter in the woods. Link in the description, QR code on screen. This is the season you stop guessing. I want to address the obvious skepticism because I had it too. When a buddy first told me to pour laundry borax on the ground to attract deer, I thought he was messing with me. It sounded like the kind of thing someone invents at deer camp after too many beers. But the chemistry is real. Boron is listed as an essential trace mineral in ruminant nutrition by the National Research Council. The NRC's 2007 publication on nutrient requirements of small ruminants includes boron among the trace minerals that affect calcium and phosphorus metabolism. The extension of that research to cervids, which is the scientific family that includes deer, elk, and moose, is supported by work from Auburn University's Department of Animal Sciences, documenting boron's role in bone mineral density in ungulates. The science is there. The deer do not read the papers. They just respond to the deficiency. I ran this test on 3 separate properties across 2 seasons before I was willing to put it on video, not because the results were unclear, because I needed to confirm that the boron mechanism was the variable, not the sodium alone. I tested borax against plain salt at the same concentration of sodium on my Ohio property. 2 tablespoons of borax contains roughly the same sodium content as half a tablespoon of table salt. I applied plain salt at that same sodium concentration to a control site 100 yards from the borax site, roughly 1 football field of separation on the same corridor. Over 4 weeks, the borax site pulled 31 visits. The plain salt site pulled 16. Both outperformed the untreated control at 9. But the borax pulled nearly twice the traffic of plain salt at equivalent sodium levels. The extra visits are attributable to the boron. It is the only variable that differed between the 2 treated sites. The deer visited both sodium sources, but they came back to the borax site more often and stayed longer per visit based on the camera timestamps. Average visit duration at the borax site was 3 minutes 40 seconds. Average at the salt site was 1 minute 50 seconds. They were spending twice as long at the boron-enriched soil. That test convinced me. The reason the borax site keeps pulling deer for 6 weeks without a refresh, while a salt lick washes out in 5 to 7 days, is the third layer. Borate ions bind to clay particles through a process called adsorption, which is the chemical bonding of dissolved ions to the surface of mineral particles in the soil. Sodium and chloride ions from a salt application dissolve in rainwater and leach downward through the soil profile within days. The salt is gone. The deer lose the signal. Borate ions bind to the aluminum oxide and iron oxide surfaces on clay particles and resist leaching. Rain washes the sodium away, but the boron stays put. The treated soil continues releasing borate ions into the moisture layer at the surface for weeks after the sodium component has leached out. The deer continue visiting because the boron signal persists even when the sodium signal has faded. I confirmed this on my northern Ohio property. That Lake Erie agricultural and hardwood transition country south of Sandusky, where the clay content in the soil runs 30 to 40%, and the terrain is flat enough that water pools in low spots after every rain. The clay-heavy soil on my property held the borate ions for the full 6-week test period. A buddy who tested the same borax treatment on sandy soil in South Georgia, That flat pine plantation in creek bottom country between Valdosta and Waycross, where the soil is deep sand with minimal clay content, got a shorter effective duration. His camera showed strong activity for 3 weeks, then a sharp decline as the boron leached through the loose sand the same way sodium does. Sandy soil does not bind borate ions the way clay does. On clay soil, expect 5 to 6 weeks per application. On sandy soil, refresh every 3 weeks. Your soil type determines the schedule. I made 2 mistakes during my testing that are worth sharing because they will save you from wasting your first application. The first mistake was applying dry borax powder directly onto the soil surface without dissolving it first. The powder sat on top of the leaf litter in a visible white pile that looked unnatural, and a doe that approached the site veered away at 10 yards, roughly the length of a pickup truck, without investigating. She saw the white powder on the brown leaves, and it spooked her. Dissolving the borax in warm water before pouring it onto bare soil eliminates the visual cue. The liquid soaks into the dirt and leaves no surface residue. The second mistake was location. I placed my first borax site at the base of a tree where I planned to hang a stand. The deer pawed the treated soil and excavated a depression roughly 4 inches deep, about the depth of a soup bowl, directly at the base of my stand tree. Every deer that visited the site was standing within 5 yards of my tree, looking straight up at the platform. I could see their eyes from the stand. They could see mine. I moved the borax site 20 yards from the stand, roughly the distance across a large living room, on the next application, and the geometry improved immediately. The deer investigated the mineral site with their heads down and their bodies oriented away from my stand instead of directly under it. A third lesson I learned on the Georgia property is that borax sites near water sources produce less traffic than sites along dry ridge travel corridors. The reason is competition. A creek or pond provides natural mineral input through dissolved minerals in the water. The deer visiting waterside mineral sites already have access to trace minerals from the water itself, which dilutes the incremental value of the borax. Sites placed on dry ridges, where the only mineral source is what the soil provides, naturally show stronger responses because the borax is filling a genuine gap in the local mineral availability. My best performing site on the Ohio property sits on a dry oak ridge 300 yards from the nearest water, roughly 3 football fields. The worst performing site was 20 yards from a creek, same borax. Same dosage. The ridge site pulled 3 times the visits. Distance from water matters. Look, I am going to be straight with you. Everything I am walking through in this video is just a small piece of what is inside. The Buck Hunter's Bible, 2026 edition, 280 pages, 101 field-tested tricks. And right now, you also get the 3-0 day opening day roadmap free with it, a 6-0 page day-by-day plan that gets you ready before the season even starts. I do not know how long that bonus stays in the deal, but if you have been watching these videos and thinking this could be my season, that is the move. Link in the description below, QR code on screen. Make this the year. The timing of your borax application matters as much as the location. The biological demand for boron peaks during antler growth, which runs from March through August in most of the whitetail range. A borax site, established in April, catches the beginning of the growth cycle when bucks are actively seeking trace minerals to support the quarter-inch per day antler development. By September, the antlers have mineralized and the biological demand for boron drops. But the behavioral habit of visiting the site carries into fall because the deer has learned that the soil at that location provides something his body wants. Spring establishment creates a pattern. Fall hunting exploits the pattern. I refresh my borax sites once in April and once in June on clay soil. That provides continuous boron availability through the entire antler growth window and establishes the visitation habit that persists into October and November. My buddy in Georgia on sandy soil refreshes monthly from April through July because the sand does not hold the borate ions as long. He mixed a half teaspoon of blackstrap molasses into his borax solution on his third application as an experiment to see if the sugar would increase initial attraction. His camera showed the first deer visit within 8 hours of the molasses addition compared to roughly 48 to 72 hours for the plain borax. The molasses provides a caloric scent signal that draws the deer in faster, and once they investigate the soil and taste the boron-enriched dirt, the mineral craving takes over and they return without the molasses trigger. I have not tested this myself, but his data was consistent across 3 applications. The molasses accelerates the first visit. The boron drives the repeat visits. 4 applications per season on sandy soil versus 2 on clay. Still under $2 total for the season on either soil type. Where borax does not work as a deer attractant is on properties with naturally boron-rich soil. Boron occurs naturally in soils derived from marine sedimentary rock, which includes coastal plains, river deltas, and former seabed formations across parts of the Gulf Coast, the Central Valley of California, and isolated pockets in the Great Basin. If your soil already contains adequate boron, adding more provides no biological benefit, and the deer have no deficiency-driven motivation to seek it. The majority of timbered hunting land in the eastern United States sits on acidic soils derived from granite, sandstone, or shale that are naturally low in boron. These soils produce vegetation with low boron content, which means the deer feeding on that vegetation are chronically boron deficient during the high-demand antler growth period. The deficiency creates the biological craving that drives them to your borax site. A soil test from your county extension office, at roughly $15, will tell you whether your property's boron levels are low enough to make the application effective. If the test comes back above 1 part per million of boron, the treatment is unlikely to produce a noticeable increase in deer visits because the deer are already getting enough from natural forage. Below 0.5 parts per million, and you are in the sweet spot where the borax provides something the deer cannot get anywhere else on the property. My Ohio soil tested at 0.3 parts per million. My buddy's Georgia soil tested at 0.4. Both properties showed strong camera responses. A third buddy tested it on his western Maryland property, that Appalachian Ridge and Oak Country, between Cumberland and Frostburg, where the ridges run 2,800 feet, and the soil is thin shale-derived clay over sandstone bedrock, and his soil tested at 0.2 parts per million boron. His camera data over 4 weeks showed 38 visits at the treated site, compared to 12 at an untreated control, roughly 3 to 1. 3 properties in 3 states with boron-deficient soil. All 3 showed a significant increase in deer traffic at the borax-treated sites. That is not proof. 3 properties never is. But the pattern matches the biology. The cost comparison tells the rest of the story. A hunter who uses commercial mineral products across a 10-year period at an average of $100 per season spends $1,000. The same hunter using borax at $5 per box, with 1 box lasting 2 seasons, spends $25 over the same decade. The savings of $975 covers a Vortex Viper HD spotting scope at $500 and a set of Hawk helium climbing sticks at $300, with enough left over for a tank of gas to the lease. One thing I need to be clear about is the difference between borax and boric acid. They are not the same product. Borax is sodium tetraborate, a relatively mild compound that is safe for soil application at the dosages I have described. Boric acid is a different chemical, with higher toxicity, that can poison soil and harm deer if ingested in concentrated form. The product you want is 20 Mule Team Borax in the green and white box from the laundry aisle, not boric acid powder from the pest control section. I mention this because a rockslide thread from 2021 documented a hunter who used boric acid instead of borax and killed the vegetation in a 10-foot circle around his application site. The deer avoided the dead zone for the rest of the season. Right product, right dose, 2 tablespoons, a quart of water. Do not improvise. My wife asked me why I had been buying mineral blocks for 15 years when a box of laundry borax cost less than a gas station sandwich. I did not have a good answer. I still do not. The one thing I want you to take away from this video is that commercial mineral products work, but the chemistry inside them is not proprietary. Sodium is sodium, whether it comes from a $22 bag or a $5 box. Boron is boron, whether a deer gets it from a borax-treated soil patch or a $35 trophy mineral block that lists boron in the fine print as a trace ingredient at 0.02% concentration. The borax delivers it at a higher concentration for a lower price because there is no dilution with fillers, no packaging markup, and no retail margin between you and the active compound. The deer does not know the difference. His body does not care about the label. A mock scrape, which is a patch of cleared dirt about 2 feet across, roughly the size of a truck tire, with a licking branch hung 4 to 5 feet above, about the height of a door frame, treated with dissolved borax, produces a dual signal. The mineral draw from the boron-enriched soil pulls deer to investigate the ground. The licking branch above provides a communication station where bucks deposit forehead gland scent and check for other bucks in the area. I treated 4 mock scrapes with borax on my Ohio property and left 4 untreated controls on the same travel corridors. Over 5 weeks in September and October, the treated scrapes produced 22 buck investigations on camera. The untreated scrapes produced 11. The borax-treated scrapes pulled twice the traffic, which matches the pattern I saw at the simple soil applications. The mock scrape format just adds the territorial communication layer on top of the mineral draw. If your camera data contradicts what I am showing here, leave the numbers below. Next time we are covering the 5 soil amendments that predict deer bedding locations on any property without a single camera. 2 tablespoons, 1 quart of water, 1 bare patch of dirt. The boron does the work. The clay holds it in place. The deer come back because their bodies tell them to. Try it this spring and let the camera decide. If the camera shows 3-to-1 over your untreated control the way mine did, you will understand why nobody with a commercial mineral sponsorship talks about this. There is no money in telling a hunter to buy a $5 box from the laundry aisle. There is money in selling him a $22 bag with a deer on the label 4 times a year for the rest of his life. The chemistry does not care about the business model. The boron works, the clay holds it, the deer come back, and the box costs less than the gas station breakfast you buy on the way to the stand. 2 tablespoons, 1 quart. Let the camera tell the story.